Hey everybody, welcome to the Now It's Dark movie podcast. I am one of your two hosts, I suppose, Mike.
And this is Tim.
And Tim, how's it going today, man?
It's going pretty well.
Today we've got a doozy.
Oh, we do.
Everybody, that's right. We're going to be going into Joker, what it's about, why it's successful, and especially we're going to be paying close attention to some of the critical backlash that has been coming its way.
Yes, I think especially the critical reaction to this film tells a lot about where we are right now in terms of just film criticism, but I think more generally, social and cultural discourse, culture writing in North America, I think is at a very unique point right now. And I think ultimately Joker may prove to be kind of a turning point in the film industry. I mean, potentially, in terms of just kind of changing the game away from escapist cinema, Disney films,
MCU,
Marvel, the MCU, towards something a little bit more gritty, a little bit more socially relevant. And also maybe potentially changing the way that films are discussed. The whole discourse around, film and social issues could change as a result of Joker.
This would be a good point as well to point out that there will be some spoilers.
Oh, absolutely.
For Joker. So if you haven't seen Joker, then maybe wait until you have seen the movie because it's really worth watching.
If I had to kind of summarize, I think, where a lot of the bad reviews of this film kind of trend towards, they just tend to be very dismissive of the idea of representing poverty or mental illness on the big screen. I think they seem to really take issue with the populist, anti-establishment appeal of the film. There just seems to be this, very obvious disgust with the idea of a populist film even being made under the guise of, a comic book character or whatever.
I think something that's important to note is that I think Joker is very much a movie of the times.
Yes.
Right? I mean, you can't talk about Joker and not go a little bit into the current political landscape, for instance, particularly in the United States. If you've got a populist in office right now, I mean, this is kind of a reflection of society, as I said.
Well, yeah, and it's also the fact that it's tapped into protest movements in other countries.
Yeah.
Is a sign that it's obviously hitting a nerve with society, not just in America, but around the world. So, yeah, maybe we should just dive right into the criticism.
Yes.
The first one, and the one I think that we should probably get to first off, is the idea that somehow this movie glorifies incels or may inspire violence.
Okay.
So
let's start with the incel one.
Yeah.
Let's do the incel.
Major notable critics here. David Elric at IndieWire called it a toxic rallying cry for self-pitying incels, while David Edelstein referred to it as, quote, an anthem for incels. So that's the incel criticism.
Okay.
The media really seemed to jump on this U.S. military memo or email that was issued to its service members that kind of, vaguely hinted at the idea that maybe there could be a threat of mass shooting related to Joker screenings.
Yeah, that's right. It was the FBI was involved in that too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, this is despite the Army saying that it was, quote, unaware of any specific plots or suspects, end quote. Virtually every media outlet seemed to report on it as if they had said the exact opposite thing.
Yeah.
They're literally saying there are no specific threats, yet every headline seemed to suggest that you were going to get, shot up if you went to see this movie.
The only thing that I was able to find was that there was potential, this is in quotes, disturbing and very specific chatter on the dark web.
Yes.
Yeah.
But then again, they say in that same email, there's no credible threat.
Right.
So I guess there is the potential, anytime a violent movie is released, there is the potential for someone to, I guess, latch onto that as an excuse to commit violence.
And that Aurora shooter who had the green hair, who killed people at the Dark Knight Rises, I mean, the Joker tag is something the media attached to him. Though it wasn't his personal...
No, there was no relation to the Joker character.
No, he just had green hair.
And the media kind of latched on to the statement made by certain family members of the Aurora shooting victims to kind of critique the movie or say that it was maybe irresponsible or too violent,
Yeah.
though they did not want the movie banned, and other family members kind of didn't sign off on this statement.
Well, the incel thing is the one that puzzles me the most, to be honest, because as far as I know, an incel stands for involuntary celibate.
Yep.
You know, they are typically men who think that even though they are nice guys and that they've got a lot to offer, women don't want them, and so they kind of start to develop this misogyny. But I don't think that Arthur Fleck exhibits any of this behavior at all, to be honest, because I think the thing that really got people about this is that he might fancy the girl next door with the daughter, and then it's revealed that all of the times that you've seen them together have been a fantasy. There's no real point in the movie where he is bemoaning that she doesn't like him. She's an insignificant character in the movie, right?
Well, she's significant, but she's not the primary reason why he's committing violence.
Yes, exactly.
Or really a reason at all.
Yeah, she's just a victim in his way.
Well, I mean, if you take this tack on the movie, then virtually every movie where a guy who doesn't get laid commits violence, it's an incel movie.
Yeah.
Taxi Driver is, quote, a anthem for incels now.
Yeah.
Because Travis Bickle isn't getting laid and he kills people. Therefore, it's automatically an incel movie.
It's an incel movie. And also, I mean, the incel thing is an identity of a community that did not exist in the 80s.
No, it kind of emerged in the 90s as far as I know, and really, I guess, became, common currency in recent years.
Yeah, I'd say this decade.
Yeah.
With the continued advancement of social media.
Yeah, I never for a moment saw this as, Joker as being a movie where it's like, oh, Arthur Fleck is right in committing violence. He's justified. We should feel that what he's doing is righteous. What it's doing is saying, all right, here's a petri dish. Here are the conditions that are going on. Here's what's going to come out of this petri dish if these conditions are in place.
Yeah.
Or here's what could come out of it. In the same way Taxi Driver did. It's like, let's put these conditions in place. Mm-hmm. This is what you're going to get as a society if you allow, people who are mentally not well, who have no real social support, who are poor, who, maybe are already prone to violence, who are because of their past. Here's what you could get if you have nothing to help them.
Mm-hmm.
And in that sense, it is empathetic, but it's not saying what he does in terms of violence is justified. It's just saying, in the same way, if a disease grows out of a petri dish because of these certain conditions, it's not saying the disease is good. It's just saying these conditions could lead to this.
And that's also why I equate this movie to them just lighting a stick of dynamite and seeing what happens until the fuse reaches the end.
I love what Dan Brooks wrote in the New York Times Magazine in response to some of this criticism. And I want to quote him at full. He actually quotes another critic in order to make his point. And he says, quote, at Slate, Sam Adams wrote that, quote, no matter how empathetic Phoenix's performance, it feels like a risk to feel too much for him, not knowing who might be sitting next to you in the theater, using his resentments to justify their own, end quote. And then Dan Brooks continues, Adams could handle the movie's nuanced portrayal of self-loathing turned outward, but what about its effect on sexless losers? End quote. So it's like, well, I'm surrounded by losers here who will probably get the wrong idea if they're not taught by people like me what to think and how to feel and how to interpret this.
Yeah, I just think sometimes it's okay to tell a story.
It's okay to trust your audience.
It's okay to trust your audience, and it's okay to tell a story. I mean, if you want to make this person a certain way, in a specific way, that's okay.
Yeah.
It's creative freedom.
Right. And maybe sometimes it's good to give your audience a little bit of credit.
Yeah.
That maybe they can figure out the idea that, hey, if I'm seeing someone do something bad on screen, I shouldn't do this in real life.
Yeah.
And it almost seemed like the media was actually disappointed when there wasn't, a mass shooting at a Joker screening. It almost seemed like they wanted it.
Yeah, like they were predicting it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they were betting on it.
Because it just totally would have justified their narrative that this movie was irresponsible, that there's a whole bunch of, seething incels just waiting to pick up a gun.
Mm-hmm.
And this movie was the chance they were waiting for. A second group of criticisms that I would kind of group into one category is the idea that, okay, maybe the Joker isn't inspiring violence, maybe it isn't, pro-incel, but it's just boring. It's poorly made, or it isn't about anything.
Mm-hmm.
And those criticisms tend to, I would say, fall into a second category of people who are like, well, we can't dismiss it out of hand because of its, pro-violent nature. So let's take a different tack on it. Dana Stevens at Slate says, quote, "The experience of sitting through it is highly unpleasant, but that unpleasantness has less to do with graphic violence. There are only one or two scenes that go hard gore-wise than with claustrophobia and boredom." And she specifically takes issue with the character of Arthur Fleck, who she sees as a grotesque whiner. He's basically just a whiner.
Yeah.
She says the film is, quote, "a feature-length exercise in voyeuristic self-pity. Poor little clownsy-wownsy. The world gave him no chance but to turn evil," end quote.
Yeah.
So again, the idea of like, oh, you were malnourished and beaten as a child.
Right.
You were adopted and your whole life is a lie. You don't have any friends. The one resource you had that actually provided you help for your social and mental problems, the funding's cut.
Yeah.
You lose your job. This is just whining. If you complain about this, according to this critic and a lot of others, it's whining.
Yeah.
You shouldn't complain about losing your job or having no support. You should just shut up and take it.
Kind of like all of those things happening as just living in society. They're saying that he has nothing to whine about, or
Right.
they're at least implying that he has
Right.
nothing to whine about. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Because society is awful. Right. We get it.
Right.
But, I'm doing fine.
And, there's another critic who takes issue with a line that Arthur says, and I want to mention this to make a broader point. This is Stephanie Zacharek, who complains that the movie's philosophy is, quote, phony, and she really takes issue with the part where Arthur says, everybody just screams at each other. Nobody's civil anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And she kind of says, quote, "Who doesn't feel that way in our terrible modern times? But Arthur's observation is one of those truisms that's so true, it just slides off the wall. A message that both the left and the right can get behind and use for their own aims. It means nothing," end quote. And so my big issue with this is the idea that when Arthur speaks, he has to say exactly what the theme of the movie is.
Mm-hmm.
So he should say, like, the reason I'm here is because of, the 1% has controlled too much of the wealth and cut social fund.
Yeah.
When people speak, when characters speak, they don't always say exactly what they're going through.
Yeah.
Their inability to express themselves is what makes them a character.
Yeah, and
right?
that's what makes someone like Travis Bickle and in this case
Exactly.
Arthur Fleck so effective, is that they're not capable of expressing themselves.
Well, a great example, Travis Bickle always says, "I don't like to devote my attention to morbid, self-pity or self-attention."
Yeah.
That's all he does.
Yes.
Right? That's what he does the entire movie because he doesn't understand himself.
Mm-hmm.
The same way that Arthur Fleck isn't able to express exactly why he's upset or exactly why he's come to this point in his life. He just kind of says this vague sentiment or expresses this vague sort of outrage at society gone wrong. And that's good writing. I don't expect him to give a treatise on why he is where he is in society right now or in life right now.
It's nuanced. By the way, this is Nicholas Barber of The Guardian. Says Joker is ultimately nothing but a flimsy 2-hour supervillain origin movie. For what it's worth, Joker is superior to Suicide Squad and Venom, but the idea that Joker is significantly more mature and intelligent than the previous superhero or supervillain films, you must be joking. So what do you make of that?
Well, I guess I just don't understand why they would say that. I mean, you can have criticisms of Joker, how it's written, but it just is obviously more serious. I mean, it's obviously grittier. That's where the risk came in. That's why Warner Brothers gave the movie $50 million or $60 million as opposed to $200 million, because it's less safe.
Mm-hmm.
That's why people are responding to it, because it's not another escapist, safe, family-friendly Marvel movie.
Yeah.
It's grittier. And that's what people like about it.
Yeah, yeah, and I would say that perhaps the reason why Martin Scorsese has come out of the woodwork saying MCU is not cinema is I'm sure it's connected to Joker.
Yeah, I would think so.
Like
I
he
would think
probably
so.
saw that and said, "Yeah, that's a real movie."
Right. I mean, another quote that I found is from Anne Hornaday at the Washington Post, who writes that the Joker character, quote, epitomizes the self-pity, entitlement, and rage that have infected a small but disproportionately vocal and psychotically violent cohort of American society. She continues, he is the avatar of a populist movement of like-minded losers who, instead of wielding torches and pitchforks, don green fright wigs and red noses, end quote.
Yeah.
So the idea is that, okay, well, this movie is either not socially relevant, it's meaningless, or if it is socially relevant, it really is only appealing to like the people who marched in Charlottesville or incels or Trump supporters.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have any appeal beyond that. And I think a lot of film critics and film reviewers have just really started to have disgust with the whole idea of populism.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think they equate any sort of populist outrage with pro-Trump politics, with racist or sexist or misogynistic sorts of discourse that you see in some corners of the right. They're not able to distinguish the fact that there are, variants of populism. There are versions of populism that are very inclusive. And I think Joker tends more towards that side than, any sort of right-wing populism.
I suppose my closing thought on what Joker is much like how Breaking Bad is a what if of what if we just take this really nice, normal guy and turn him into Scarface. Joker is kind of the same way.
Right.
What if we just took this guy whose things aren't really going well for him and make him absolutely insane?
Right.
And it's nothing more than that.
Yeah. It's saying, like, what if you have all these conditions that are, some are widespread, some less so.
Yeah.
But what if they all kind of conflate in this one perfect storm of a character who just goes off the rails?
Exactly. And, does that mean that you should be going insane? No. Of
course
it doesn't. But I accept this movie for what it is in a vacuum.
Yeah.
I think by the time the year is over, it will be in my top 5, if not my top 3 favorite movies of the year.
Yeah, I would say the same. And I would hope that Joker is kind of a turning point away from, this onslaught of escapism.
Yes.
Away from Disney and Marvel. I mean, I hope they continue to exist in one form, but I don't want them to be so dominant. I hope Joker opens the way for more socially relevant movies, more kind of populist movies, grittier movies that are taking a look at psychological and social and economic conditions that the vast majority of us are going through right now.
Yeah, man. I love this movie, and like you said, I want to see more of it. I want to see more of this type of thing.